On Second Thought, episode 311, brought to you by Hook'em.com and our good friends at Bud Light. Cedric Golden here with the Duck Kirk Bowls. And Duck, anytime we really have a big game going, sometimes you have to reach into the treasure trove of great guests we've had in the past. And Greg McElroy of ESPN has joined us. Now, before we get to Greg, I'm just give you a little background. He's famous now on ESPN, but once upon a time, he was the quarterback at Alabama, and he was the guy that beat Texas in the BCS title game. And he did it all by himself, carrying bums like Mark Ingram and Trent Richardson and Julio Jones. I don't know how he came through that day, but Greg McElroy by himself led the Crimson Tide and pulled Nick Saban out of the throes of mediocrity to get a title. Greg, how are you today, man?
Well, I'm glad y'all remember it the way I remember it. So that's good. We're on the same page there. So that's encouraging to know that we're starting off on the same page.
Started the dynasty. That's what happened. So Greg, you were in Austin last week. You did the Kansas-Texas game. Saw them up close and personal. What were your firsthand impressions of the Longhorns?
Well, the first thing, I think they're really, really good, Kirk. We talked about it a little before the game. I think it's an excellent team, excellent personnel. It's funny. It's like it just took people a long time to kind of warm up to the idea that they can really compete this year. And look, this is a prove it business. This is not, it's not a business where you can go based on the roster, because if we went based on the roster, I mean, it'd be pretty easy to pick who was going to win the national championship every year. But if you really dove into the roster this year, I mean, it was as deep and as good as pretty much anyone, especially coming into the year. I mean, I'm looking back at it, and I remember in the preseason, I actually did on my own podcast that we put out today. We had kind of put our preseason top 25 together, and I had Texas at 7. And that was higher than what most people had them at. But a lot of people were killing me like, oh, not again. Here we go again with the Longhorns. But what's funny is I actually felt like I was conservative with where I put them, because I was looking at their roster in the preseason. I actually said this in my preseason evaluation of them. Like, if you look at their roster, okay, Georgia and Michigan probably have the best rosters right now based on returning production, but I'm telling you, Texas doesn't really take a back seat. So while I had them at 7, I should have had them in the top 3. And I kind of regret not taking that chance, because the roster obviously was ready. They're mature enough now to be able to handle the expectations. And I can't say I'm surprised with where they're at right now. Did I think they'd go to Tuscaloosa and win the way they won? No, I thought they could go to Tuscaloosa and win, but it wasn't going to look as convincing as it did. Because while we can look at Alabama and their own mistakes made in that game, Texas was far from flawless in that game and still won, which I think is the definition of a good team. I mean, did they have their A game that night? Probably not, and they still went on the road and got a convincing victory. So I think that's a sign of a team that can win it all. And obviously they're trending in that direction that they certainly can. It's just a matter of whether or not they will.
I think I had them about 7 too, but Sedgwick was the doubter in the group, right, Sid?
It depends on what you mean by doubt, sir.
What was your record?
What are we talking about here? What are we talking about here?
What was your preseason record?
9-3, and proud of that 9-3, because
I said that 10-2 was the floor. So as a guy that certainly does not, well, I guess maybe I do have some orange blood a little bit when it comes to the Longhorns. Like I did feel like 10-2 was kind of the floor. So which ones did you have them losing? Bama and who?
K-State and all.
Because of how K-State put it on them last year. What are we doing? Come on, man. Like, am I supposed to be the homer here? Like, what are we doing?
That's one thing that they'll never call me here is a homer. Or Kirk, for that matter, until this year, where he's just, oh my God, we're taking him in for testing. But
well, I remember. Hey, first of all, I'll say this: like, we had Kirk on the radio show leading up to the Alabama-Texas game, and Kirk was basically like, "Oh, they might get killed." I mean, basically, that was, he was like, totally prepared for like we came away with it like, golly, surely we don't think Texas has a better chance than he does, but he was like very, very gentlemanly about his assessment, and he was very coach-esque. He goes, "Well, we got to do this. He didn't say we, but he's like, they got to do this. They got to do this. They got to." He was like Coach Sark. Like, you would think that they absolutely stunk up the joint in week 1 against Rice. Now we fast forward, Rice is pretty good, and it's like, but it was kind of funny though, because I remember thinking like, man, I feel like I'm gonna have to talk Kirk into this game being competitive, because he was like coach speak to the max about the things that they needed to improve on. And sure enough, it all came to light. He was doing the rat poison dance. That's what was going on.
And to not bury the lead, he picked Texas win the game in the paper.
It was a nervous pick, as you know, Sid.
But you were right. Who cares how you were feeling?
It's not about how you get to the finish line. It's about whether or not you did. Exactly, and you did right. There you go.
The end justified the means. And so, Greg, I am so intrigued. And for those who have been on Mars for the last week, Texas v. Oklahoma, 11 a.m. Saturday, the quarterback matchup, it's the first time Texas is really facing a guy. I mean, JT Daniels is the most nomadic quarterback in the country, and he's at Rice. And then the other guys were largely inexperienced guys. How do you break down this quarterback matchup between Dillon Gabriel and one Quinn Ewers going in?
Well, I think they're actually they're very comparable in a lot of ways, and a lot of people won't necessarily look at it that way. But it's actually funny, because we were talking to Sark last week leading up to the game. He goes, "Well, our program and Kansas program are kind of the same right now." And I was like, you know what I mean? Like, hang on, what do you wait what? You know?
You seen
and he goes, here's what I mean by that, is that they took over. It took a year for people to buy in, and then they got incrementally better last year and improved. And now they're in year 3, and it's time for them to break through. Which, you know what? I understand why he was drawing comparisons to that and drawing some parallels to that. As far as Quinn Ewers, Dillon Gabriel, I think they're very comparable. And you're going to say, hang on a second, one's 5'10", the other's 6'3". One, has played a million snaps of football at the college level. One hasn't. But I look at the fact that they are now in year 2 in their respective systems, and you're seeing the light really come on for both. The next level play that you're seeing from both. Quinn Ewers, everyone that's listening to this show has probably seen almost every snap of his this year. I've watched every snap. You see his comfort level within the system increasing drastically. And one area where I think you can really tell with a quarterback and his understanding is how quickly is he getting rid of the football. Last year, over the course of the entire season, he averaged getting the ball out from the time the ball was snapped to the time he released it was 2.6 seconds. Might not seem like a lot, but you think about how many throws are at the line of scrimmage, and how many quick throws like that. That's about right in college football. Well, this year he's actually at 2.3 seconds. So same offense, but he's processing it about 10% faster than he did last year. And then he actually peaked this year against Baylor, where it was 2.19 seconds. So his comfort level is on display with how quickly he's getting the ball out. And that's decisiveness. That's understanding of where to go. That's understanding, hey, number 1's not going to be there. Let me get to 2. Let me get to 3, what have you. Dillon Gabriel's on a similar trajectory, where he had played in an offense very similar to this at UCF, but it was a little bit different. And it was obviously different level of competition. And last year, there were some growing pains. He did some nice things. He had some struggles. This year, he looks like he has full command. So I do think both quarterbacks have progressed beautifully under their current coordinators, Sark for Quinn and Jeff Lebby for Dillon, and to have seen them now kind of take the next step within their own offense has been fun to watch.
He's completing 75%. Texas giving up like 53% to opposing quarterbacks. As said, the last 3 games have all been backup quarterbacks, and Jalen McElroy, as you know, was making his 3rd collegiate start. So I don't know who gets the advantage there. That and Dillon Gabriel haven't played a great schedule. I think OU's schedule is ranked 96th or something. How does that play into it as far as who they've played against, Greg?
Well, I mean, all the strength of schedule metrics are a little, wonky right now. I don't usually look a lot into it because I watch Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's pretty dang good on defense. Like, they're not. Look,
Score. They just can't score.
Yeah, they're challenged in some ways offensively, but coming into that game, and they had been running the ball like crazy against. I mean, and Pitt's not good this year, but Pitt,
right?
Pat Narduzzi, like you can't run on Pitt. So
Right.
like since he can run, and they did a good job against him there. And I think that when you look at Cincinnati's defensive line in particular, like they have 2 or 3 guys up front on defensive line that would certainly be in the rotation at Texas. Like they're that good.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that defensive line has challenged them. And granted, it wasn't a high-powered offensive performance. They scored 20 points in the game against Cincy, but I do think that they have been tested to an extent, even if the strength of schedule wouldn't reflect that. Granted, they're not Bama. Excuse me, as my emergency alarm goes off for whatever reason.
Mine went off too.
Oh, that's a national alert, so we're okay.
That was scheduled. Yeah,
it's a test. We're good. It was a test.
Mine didn't go off. I guess I should be worried. I guess
I apologize for that. So I look at what they've done to this point. I think Dillon Gabriel's playing really good football. And the one area, and Kirk, you and I talked about it before the game, the area that concerns me the most for Texas is their secondary. I think their front seven defensively is amazing. I think their wide receivers are incredible. I think their offensive line's playing really high-level football. I love what Jonathan Brooks has done. Maybe that was a question mark, but he's now come into his own. I think Quinn's playing much more confidently this year. Threw a pick last week, but who cares? Like, I mean, I know that, look, obviously Sark cares, but it's not that big a deal. He's seeing the field really well. So there's really not a lot of holes in this team. But I do think if you get one-on-ones with their safeties, they can be beat. And I think right now, I don't know the current status of Ryan Watts, whether or not he'll be back or whatnot, but I think the corners could be susceptible to one-on-ones. And they're going to, I would imagine Oklahoma probably recognizes that, and they're going to try to get their shots against those guys. One area that Oklahoma hasn't done a great job of so far is run the football. But if you look at how Kansas attacked them, perimeter runs might be an area where you can maybe find some success. Are you going to run it up the middle against Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy? Probably not. But the perimeter, you might be able to have some success. So if I'm Oklahoma, I'm starting going all over the place, sideline to sideline in the run game, perimeter runs all over the place, and then try to take my shots downfield and hope that your quarterback that you referenced is completing 75%. Hope that he's able to connect on some deep ones to kind of break it open.
Greg, I was asked a really good question on the radio yesterday, and I'm going to ask you, and I haven't even talked to Kirk about this. Will the winner of this game be in the CFP? What do you think?
No, I don't think it's necessarily a foregone conclusion. Right now, what's going on in all of college, I mean, there's like, we do an eliminator on my podcast every week, and we started with 53 teams. And week 3, now we're down to 23 teams I think can make the playoff. These 2 teams are obviously both in the mix right now. But if I looked back at last year, and I did, that number would be a whole heck of a lot smaller than it is this year. I mean, there are a lot of good teams. And frankly, at the top, there's a lot of questionable teams at the top. Like right now, I mean, I think Michigan's really good, but they haven't played anybody. I mean, nobody up to this point.
What about Ohio State by 19 over the Turtle? I mean, that's a mind-blowing point spread given their struggles offensively.
Yeah, I mean, and they haven't really played their best game. They haven't played a 4-quarter game yet. They have played a 4-quarter game. They haven't put 60 minutes together. Granted, they found it in bunches a little bit, the big run against Notre Dame. I just think there's a lot of really, really good football teams. And I think every single team has a question mark. It's not like right now you can look at even Georgia, 2-time defending champ, and say, man, that team is a lock for the college football playoff. You can't say that right now. I think frankly, maybe they have their hands full this weekend. I don't think it's a great matchup for Kentucky. But maybe they can run the ball on them. I mean, they just gave 218 yards on the ground against Auburn. And they just ran for 280. Kentucky did against Florida, and Florida coming into that game was the number 1 defense in the SEC. Exactly. So I think it's a really interesting year. I think the winner of this game has a really good chance, but with the way things are laid out in the Big 12, this might be the first of 2 times that these teams play each other. And the team that wins the conference championship is going to be given the benefit of the doubt, given recency bias at the end of the year. So
you're going to lose right now. Yeah.
Well, let's just not, let's just not lose and eliminate all
Yeah.
doubt. But
Yeah.
I think even the loser of this game certainly has a chance. And conference championship title will be worth more than a regular season game between these two teams. So we'll see how it plays out. But, I wouldn't be surprised if the winner is in a great position to probably punch their ticket to the dance.
So who do you like Saturday?
I like Texas, but I like them close. And everyone thinks it's gonna be high scoring. Like I think both teams are gonna be a little conservative early, just kind of feel each other out a little bit. They know a big play could, really upset the apple cart. If I'm Oklahoma, I really, really want to win the coin toss, and I really, really want the ball. Because I want to put some pressure on Texas. I want Dillon Gabriel to go out there and hopefully score a touchdown on a big play to kind of open things up. And then, Quinn Ewers has a lot of pressure on him. And now, hey, let's roll. It's a weird spot. I've talked about this with a few people. It's a weird spot where all the pressure, even though both teams are undefeated, all the pressure for whatever reason feels like it's on Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't it? I mean, I feel like Oklahoma's kind of playing with house money.
Yeah,
it's
coming
like,
off 6 and 7, I think. Yeah, I think
exactly.
You're right.
But I mean, Texas come off 8 and 5. It's not like they're coming off of a national championship runner-up, but it feels like for a lot of reasons, Texas is the year that Texas has circled. And this is, if they come up short in this game, it's going to be, same old Texas. Like, it just feels like there's a lot of pressure on Texas in this game. Whereas with Oklahoma, it's like, man, let's just throw caution to the wind. Let's go get it.
Yeah.
So I don't love that spot for Texas. I think they hang on. I think they win, but I wouldn't be surprised if they don't play well. And I think the final score, I'm taking Texas 31, Oklahoma 27. I think it's going to be a good game, and one that, wouldn't shock me if it becomes a little bit more high scoring than that. But I think it's going to be played a little bit close to the vest, and it's going to be a grinded out type of game for the Horns.
Do you think Steve Sarkisian needs this more than Brent Venables?
That's a good question, because I think Sark is in. I think the oil money's real happy with Steve right now. I think we've talked about this with Sark too. I think Chris Del Conte has done an amazing job in being able to make sure that, he handles the presidential responsibilities that Mac Brown used to love, and Sark can just focus on ball. And that's taken a lot of the pressure off of Sark, and obviously the performance on the field, no one wants to mess with it now. And he already has his signature win going on the road to Alabama. This would be Brent Venables' signature win. So I think there's more pressure as far as the coaching staff. There's more pressure on Venables than there is on Sark at the moment.
And real quick, I know you got to go. A&M, Alabama, Aggies got a chance?
Oh, yeah. No, they match up really well. They have a great D-line, and Alabama's offensive line has been suspect of late. Tough place to play naturally. So yeah, I think that game's going down to the wire, man. I mean, that thing's going to be a coin toss at the very end. It's going to be really close.
Yeah, I do too.
Greg McElroy, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure to chop it up with you. He's going to be doing Georgia, Kentucky this weekend. We'll be thinking about you from the Cotton Bowl. Be well, my friend, and safe travels.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks again for having me.
Thanks, Greg.